So, hello everyone, and welcome back. I see that I see your messages now as well, Jana. But first of all, I would like to welcome back all participants at this session, and of course, we look forward to engaging the whole of the GEO community today. Today, we're on session 3, and I think the idea is here to showcase the GEO efforts to promote science policy interface by engaging various stakeholders, including policymakers and users in the GEO community. But before I go into how the session is actually split up, I think Jana wanted the floor so that you can share some of the news that you have from your end about the daily coverage via a reporting service that you have developed.
Yes, thank you, Joanna, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone. This is just a quick note to let you know that this year we are bringing you daily coverage of the Geo Week, well, some of the Geo Week events, the Geo Plenary, the anchor sessions, the youth track, and the industry track, which concluded yesterday. This reporting service is by IISD Environmental Negotiations Bulletin, ENB. You can subscribe to their service and you will be receiving an email with their coverage straight in your inbox. The Secretariat will circulate to everyone in GEO an email providing you with the link. So if you happen to have missed any of the fabulous anchor sessions that we had yesterday because it was nighttime for you, you can get really good, crisp summary with main highlights from this coverage, and you can also share this across your networks if you want to share any of the highlights from the Geo Week with parties who are not participating in the Geo Week. So be on the lookout for an email from the Secretariat with the link to IISD ENB reporting service. And if you are on social media, you can also follow all of the buzz. If you look up hashtag GeoWeek 2021, the Secretariat tweets with the handle at GeoSec 2025. There is quite a bit out there in the social media world also about the Geo Week. That's all for the announcement. Back to you, Joanna.
Thank you, Jana. And let's now kick off the session 3, which, as I said, will be split up into 3 parts. So we will first start off with a panel discussion by the regional GEOs, which will provide us with some regional and national perspectives. Then we'll go on to the second part of the session with a series of presentations on the ongoing efforts by GEO's 3 thematic working groups. And these groups are climate change, disaster risk reductions and capacity building. And finally, and the last part for today's time has come to discuss the introduction of a new engagement priority in GEO on resilient cities and human settlements. Well, this has been a topic that certainly has been even on my personal agenda, featuring much more prominently, and I can tell you in the Commission's agenda, and I would say in the global agenda, and I'm really happy that it is actually being also discussed in this context. There has been a lot more attention paid to urban topics within GEO, and which this therefore necessitates that we have to increase our efforts, not only on the subject matter itself, but also in the way that we coordinate the results that we get among the urban-related activities. Resilience again is now, further up in everybody's dictionary, everybody's daily dictionary, I would say. But in our context of GEO, it provides a really strong link between the Sendai framework, the Paris agreements, and the new urban agenda, but also links closely to several of the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs. So what has this resulted in? Well, it has resulted in a proposal to adopt resilient cities and human settlements as a 4th GEO engagement priority. So it's a serious proposition, but it has also been, I would say, propped up by an engagement plan framing the objectives of GEO's engagement on urban resilience. Well, maybe a reminder here would not be amiss, and that would be that the expected outcome is that of stimulating you as the regional GEOs to contact additional agencies and also to adopt the fourth engagement priority, as I said. Okay, so let's see if we're going to live up to that challenge. And having said this, I'll now hand over to Dr. Evangelos Gerasopoulos for the panel discussion. Dr. Evangelos Gerasopoulos is a research director at the National Observatory of Athens and the GEO Program Board co-chair, who will moderate the session. Evangelos, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, John. So a very warm welcome to anybody, and thank you for being with us in the third plenary session of the GEO week. Next slide, please. The theme of the session has been well described by Joanna, so I will not go through this. Before we start, some very quick logistics. So I would kindly ask the panelists and presenters to maintain their camera on while we are having the discussion and the Q&A sessions, while keeping their microphones off while not speaking. We had some issues during the last day, so please, everybody in the audience, keep the microphones off. And I would kindly encourage the people attending to pose questions and interact through the chat throughout the whole session. So next slide, please. This is the structure of today's session, 3 parts, as described also by Joanna, so I will not go through further details on this. Next, please. And we are starting straight away with the first discussion, the first session, the panel discussion, where the regional GEOs will be given the floor to provide us with their recent insights through concrete practices and examples on how they pursue engagement with policy and user communities. And this will actually enable us to collect good practices and lessons learned through these processes and see how we can further up collaboration between the working program activities. Next, please. This global view will be given by 4 esteemed colleagues. Phoebe Odur, the point of contact of the AfriGeo Secretariat, who is working for the Regional Center for Mapping of Resources for Development, and will be representing AfriGeo. Angelica Gutierrez, lead scientist at the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration in the United States, representing AmeriGeo. Toshio Koike, the Executive Director of the International Center for Water Hazard and Risk Management under the auspices of UNESCO, on behalf of the Asia Oceanic GEO. And last but not least, Thierry Vincent, Professor at Mines Paris. The panel, next please. The panel discussion will be driven by these 3 main questions. The first 2 questions, to which all panelists will be elaborating, they will be given 5 minutes and concern the science policy interface. How do we approach stakeholders at different levels? How the stakeholders, who are they and what feedback are we receiving from them? What is the impact from interacting with them and how can we measure it? What are the challenges in this process and how we can overcome them? And then in the discussion that we will follow, we will try to see how we can engage and make more efficient the collaboration between the regional GEOs and also other GEO activities. So without further ado, I pass the floor to our first speaker. Next slide, please. Phoebe Odur, background in land use, land cover mapping activities, highlight that she has supported several gender-related issues. All panelists' CVs are available, so I will not be getting into details. Phoebe, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Evangelos. Next, please. So I'll be talking about the AfriGeo LDN engagements for the region. Next, please. We look at LDN in three lenses. So one of the lenses is to avoid, and this talks to how can we be able to put in measures that avoid degradation. We also look at LDN in the context of reducing, and basically the idea here is for us to look into ways in which we can have sustainable land management practices, particularly where forest and agricultural practices are concerned. And lastly is the pillar that talks to reverse, and this is one of the hardest pillar to implement because reversing land degradation takes really a long time. So if we can operate within the first two pillars, then we are in a better place. So as far as LDN is concerned, we are trying to address issues related to stopping and halting deforestation, which is SDG 15.3. Next, please. AfriGeo has adopted the LDN from the same working groups that are being implemented by GEO LDN initiatives. So we have the capacity building working group, which looks into providing a framework for capacity building. So looking into what is there in the region and what needs to be improved. Then we also have the working group on data quality standards. So in this particular data working group standards, we are specifying the minimum characteristics of data sets that can be used and should be used in terms of monitoring and measuring land degradation, but also looking into what tools are there. That is analytics, looking at what tools are there in terms of making data accessible and also in terms of processing. Next, please. Again, also, we take an insight view of what is it that is available in Africa. So we are not operating in a vacuum, and we take note of that. Within Africa, we have ground receiving stations all over that are receiving data, whether it is weather-related data or it's providing information related to vegetation. So how can we take advantage of what we already have? There's also the fact that we already have within institutions, within governments, an archive of data, some of which is at national level and others at very small scale levels. There is also the issues related to connectivity and infrastructure. And here we're trying to take advantage of research education networks, which enable us to be able to basically connect to the backbone of fiber. And we have different regions being supported through UbuntuNet, through WACREN, and also ASREN. So these different connectivity networks have been able to advance research in terms that you're able to access very, very huge amounts of data, and this is able to advance research in that manner. Then there's also the component of high performance computing computers through cloud computing resources that are available for us to also still be able to advance our research aspects. So the only thing that needs to connect all these components that we already have is the policies in place. How can we be able to connect different institutions in terms of working together and sharing resources? Next, please. In terms of who we are working with, we have the GMS in Africa, basically that is implementing LDN surveys for the Horn of Africa. So this is being supported through RCMRP where I work. We also have global initiatives like LDN that is looking at land degradation from a global perspective. But besides this, we have the AfriGeo co-chair that is being supported through SANSA. And also as a region, we take note that there are certain priority areas that we would want to be able to take account of. So we've provided a grant to the University of Free State that is going to be collecting all these user needs and priority action areas that is going to support us in terms of understanding where implementation needs to go. Then we also have the support from the University of Energy and Natural Resources in Ghana, where we have Amos Kaboba, who supports the region as the co-chair of GEO-LDN initiative. Then our most important stakeholders here becomes the land planners and the member states, who are the actual users who take this data and information and make decisions out of them. Next, please. In terms of current activities, we are doing the scoping mission on what tools are existing, what are the priority needs and what needs to be done. We also have the engagement that are taking place both at regional level and at global level. So we are participating in that way. And through the global participation, we support particularly the capacity building working group. And through that, we're looking at how we can be able to rapidly build capacity of users within Africa through massive online open courses, and also look at how we can also develop degree and PhD programs that they can be able to partake in and support their institutions in a much more focused way. Next, please. In terms of challenges, part of this include linkages at program level. As I've already mentioned, there are things going on at national level as far as LDN is concerned. There are also things going on at regional and global level. So getting linkages in such a way that all these stakeholders have a harmonized direction in terms of implementation, in terms of priorities, is something that is still challenging. There's also the issue of data access. LDN, to be able to get to where we have very useful information, requires a lot of data sets. And we take into account that we do not have the privilege of access evenly spread throughout Africa. So that is part of the challenges. Then there's also the challenge related to policy action transformation. And this speaks to the fact that, yes, we have all this information that we are providing on areas where degradation is occurring, how do we take this data and information that is being provided and translate that into very actionable decisions where we see the reverse component where we are reforming degraded lands. And lastly is to be able to monitor our LDN efforts. The monitoring aspects requires the resources, and part of this requires that we are able to account for these resources that are being put in place to make sure that we can be able to put in actions and put in basically things that the policymakers can be able to see that these resources have been utilized, and we can be able to see transformed actions out of it. Next, please. Some of the lessons we are seeking to learn from other regions include cross-regional exchanges. We take into account that LDN it's not a regional problem, it's a global problem. So getting to learn from other regions how they are using the LDN information to transform degraded lands is something we're looking keen to be able to learn from them. We're also looking for those impactful innovation and tools and approaches that they're using that we can be able to borrow from. Lastly is we take into account that this is a multi-stakeholder issue, and we are willing to collaborate to be able to address the LDN challenges we have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Phoebe. A very rich portfolio of diverse activities, impressive connectivity network, well-identified challenges. This is the right way to go. So thank you very much. I will kindly ask the next speakers to please try to stay within the 5 minutes of the intervention. So we move on with AmeriGeo and Angelica Gutierrez, working on hydrology, water quality, and environmental policy. And among many others, is co-chairing the GeoGlows initiative at GEO. So Angelica, the floor is yours.
Thank you and good morning, everyone. I'm going to start this morning provide information from 4 of our countries. So next, please. The first one is Costa Rica, and Costa Rica has been working with the GEO AWS Cloud Credits Program with a project for modeling ecosystem services, also in collaboration with Stanford University, the Central Bank of Costa Rica, the PRIAS Laboratory of the National Center for High Technology. Also, Costa Rica has been part of the GEO Google Earth Engine License Program from GEO. Is also collaborating with EO Toolkit for Sustainable Development, Cities and Human Settlements. And finally, they have a project, UNDP, called Nature Mapping. Taking all this param into account, they have been doing a very good job connecting government organizations to address the impacts and challenges that they have in the environmental level. Costa Rica has managed to access payments for results for up to $140 million in the last 2 years, thanks to its performance in the forestry sector that has allowed it to reverse deforestation trends and emissions related to this sector. There are more than 40 government and academic institutions, NGOs, private groups, and international agencies that have been part of this process. The role of the National Center for Geoenvironmental Information of MINAE as coordinators of the development of Simocute and the Red Secretariat of MINAE has been working with FAO, UNDP, AmeriGeo, World Bank, Silva Carbon, JEF, IDB, and many other organizations. All these activities are led by the Ministry of Environment and Energy, the Ministry of Agriculture and Livestock, and the National Geographic Institute. Next. In Argentina, Geoclimate, and through all the activities of the agriculture and Geo, have been working in the last 2-3 years with the ministry, with INTA. Since 2019, the rainfall levels in Argentina have dropped sharply and left the region in drought. Argentina declared a 6-month drought emergency in late July this year. And they have estimated that due to the 2021 drought, Argentina lost $620 million in exports of soybean, flour, and oil. Thanks to the use of Earth observations and the program between NASA and INTA, analysis have been provided to government organizations to respond to this emergency in the country. Next. In Puerto Rico and Guatemala, AmeriGeo, in collaboration with other organizations in the region, and specifically in these 2 areas, have been implemented the program Salvatierra. In Canton Limon, in Costa Rica, for example, Guatemala, Puerto Rico, has made possible to establish a system analysis of disaster risk that have made it possible to create land use planning policy based on environmental and fragility indexes. And in Guatemala, for example, is a very populated area with more than 3 million people. And also in Puerto Rico, with a population of 3.2 million people, there has been investment specifically from NASA programs to establish the Salvatierra. The result has been high-resolution multi-hazard studies based on environmental fragility index and climate change. And this is in collaboration with the government of Guatemala and the cities of Ponce and Lajas in Puerto Rico. Next. And this is my last one. Since 2017, AmeriGeo has been working very closely with the National Geo in Peru, and several activities have occurred in the last 3 years, since 2019. The impact for Peru is that it's a population of 33 million. The economy in Peru is an emerging country, and we have been, based on these activities that we have done, more than $200,000, for example, was received in awards during the Mapathon in Peru in 2021. And the last is very important. There was an MOA signed between USGS and CONIDA, and the objective, this memorandum of agreement between the 2 countries have been formalized to facilitate cooperative research in Earth observations and technology development which has numerous applications for national priority research areas. So the summary of these four countries that we selected for this presentation shows that the work that AmerGeo has been doing in bringing in the different organizations in the countries and strengthening the national geos has definitely provided an impact to the region, not only in capacity development, but also in investment from the various countries in Earth observation. Thank you.
We thank you very much, Angelica. So very nice, different social economic sectors. It seems to be that it has been built up on well understood problems, which is important. You presented very concrete examples and tangible outcomes with a variety of stakeholders. It seems very nice. National engagement is some of the key points that I'm keeping, and the involvement of national geos. I think those elements we should be discussing later on. So we move on to the next presentation, which has been prepared by Kokie Toshio. He's leading the Asian Water Cycle Initiative and the African Water Cycle Coordination Initiative, and he's Professor Emeritus at the University of Tokyo. So we will now see a pre-recorded video on his presentation. Rick, please.
Hello, everyone. It is my great pleasure to introduce our activity on Asia Water Cycle Initiative, AWCI in short, in AOGeo and GeoGrowth as an example of science and policy interface. I'm Toshio Koike, Executive Director of International Center for Water Hazard and Risk Management, ICHAM, under the auspices of UNESCO. AWCI has been building a nationwide network and decision-making platform on water resilience and disaster, which support related departments and agencies to implement real-time flood monitoring and forecasting in operation, e-learning module for practitioners, flood warning and evacuation orders by national and local government, climate change impact assessment reflected in national disaster risk reduction plans and national adaptation plans, and preparing to make disaster risk reduction plans and contingency plans at municipalities. There are three key elements in building this nationwide platform. First, we have been working as a part of the United Nations cooperative framework, that is, International Flood Initiative, IFI in short. And these platform activities are strongly endorsed by the United Nations high-level group. Second, we can share continuous institutional support, including secretariat functions and higher education, including master and PhD degree course for practitioners and experts. Last but not least, we have key abilities to offer ready-to-use Earth observation products, that is, integration and dissemination of data models and management systems implemented by the Data Integration and Analysis System, DIAS. In the Philippines, the platform on water resilience and disasters has already made a design for its structure by identifying the data integration component and 4 risk assessment components, including flood forecasting early warning, climate change impact assessment component, economic assessment component, agricultural productivity assessment component, and to create societal benefit, 4 components for investment direction, policy making, decision making, and local practice. These support components have been already identified. To integrate damage and socio-economical data and information, in addition to hazard data, which is offered by the hydrometeorological agencies, more than 20 departments, agencies, authorities, municipalities, and universities join this platform. And key data users have been also identified. Furthermore, to develop the capacity of these partners, this platform identified the capacity development component. A prototype of the online census system have been developed, and a facilitator training program have been implemented. We have to improve our capacity, especially for sharing water data, working together by all, and visualization of benefit to be obtained through the platform activities. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Toshio. A very impressively long list of stakeholders involved working in harmony. So yeah, we need to discuss about this. So the last presentation will be delivered by Thierry. He is working on the renewable energy resources field. And he's also leading the GEO initiative in GEO and the flagship Horizon 2020 eSafe project. So Thierry, please take the floor.
Thank you, Evangelos. So I'm the last regional GEO presenter, so I decided to present to the Assembly a science policy interface example at national level and to discuss how to upscale it. Next, please. So the idea that I will present are reflection and work that had been done at the national level in France in order to set up carbon neutrality in the energy part. Next, please. So just to give you a short reminder about EuroGeo, you should remind that EuroGeo is an initiative that starts from data-driven and want to shift to user-driven approach. That it's delivering EO application benefiting of integrated global data set, and that support the implementation of the European Green Deal, but also all geo engagement priority, even the last one that has been adopted, the fourth one on urban resilience. Next, please. So the example I'm going to discuss, the science and policy interface, is the one coming from the French government to the French TSO, the transmission system operator, the one that delivers the electricity for the global system, RTE, how to reach the carbon neutrality in 2050. That's the question as it was asked to RTE. So behind this political question, in link with all the element, all the engagement of GEO and peculiarly the one on the Paris Agreement, there are scientific questions. What kind of climatic data we should use? What are the scenarios for future energy consumption? What are the production scenario? And what type of mix we should build, or how to balance energy and electricity? Next, please. So this question has several aspects. One on technical aspects about description of the network in the coming years till 2050. climatic scenario, of course, and the resilient analysis in case of extreme event. We had experienced that in France many times. It has an aspect on economy, what the cost for society. Can we have reindustrialization for each of these scenarios? What is the sensitive analysis that we can have? It has an environmental part, which is linked with the carbon footprint, and not only the carbon, but all environmental impact that we can have due to these new scenarios, the material balance, the land use for network, for the electrical network and for the production, and also the volume of waste and pollutant. And for sure, there is an aspect linked with the impact on lifestyle and also the validity condition of different scenarios on electric mobility, on telework, on the flexibility of the users, etc. Next, please. So to support this work, Earth observation data is mandatory. And we had several type of data coming from our national Met Office, Météo France, climatic scenarios that were extracted in link with what we can find in the different IPCC elements, but also a lot of additional information in terms of hydro, land use, solar radiation, wind information for the computation of the energy mix scenario, and also the inclusion of production, consumption, and the evolution of the network. In situ data is here also for the current consumption of electricity and energy, but also on models for the future, statistical information in terms of demography of the current situation, and the description of all the elements that are input to the different models. Next, please. So in this, we have a series of challenges that are here announced in terms of how to pave the way for the use of the results of the scenario. How can the political government can take some decision from this? How to use open data and open software, and that's clearly linked with the open knowledge decision that we are discussing this on this plenary, and also something that happened at the national level with an opening of the data and the software. For sure, there is this clear need to adapt all the results and all the scenarios to the needs that have been expressed, not to the view that the RT have, but on the need in determining the future of the energy in France. And for sure, the communication with end user, which is key. At the end of the day, we have an answer to the original question through a series of recommendations for the future of the French energy mix toward the carbon neutrality in 2050. And this was presented in October. And you can follow all the recommendation and the report. They are online and available. Next, please. And now the idea is how we can build on this experience and learn about what happened in order to upscale this example at least the regional level, but also worldwide. So first of all, we need an actor which is able to handle the result and to discuss it with the political institution. And this exists at the regional level. It's called ENSTOI, the European Network of Transmission Support Operator, and they are able to handle this. And we are taking some contact with them in order to go further, and they will be probably the main user of the result of this upscaling activity. We need the support of Met Office, and the one which is key on that is ECMWF, which operates the Copernicus services on climate and on atmospheric, and deliver data that is useful for such a type of study. Even on the CDS, on the Copernicus data store, you have tools that allow to generalize and to present the data sets for solar energy, for wind energy, and for hydro energy on the framework of 2050 and more. And this is available worldwide. And all the data sets coming from the climatic point of view are here and available on the Copernicus Climate Change Service. Take a look to that. That's really amazing what is available there. Of course, we need, and we have the need of the Geodra, as I said, for the generalization at the regional and the global level. And most of the elements that are available, GeoGlove is able to give some information on the hydro. We have the land use coming from Geoclimate, etc., etc. And finally, we have in EuroGeo a lot of output that can be used with methodology that are set up in different projects. The specific application that has been set up to support these actions, and all the assets coming from Copernicus, from the GEOS, and all the elements that are supporting the geo work through the energy through the EuroGeo activity. Next, and thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Thierry, for your presentation. So we are moving to our panel discussion. I would kindly ask the four previous speakers to turn on their cameras if they wish to, and of course anybody else from the audience that would like to turn on his or her camera. So I also encourage people to pose direct questions or clarification questions for the presentations to the panelists in the chat. So I think everybody from the panelists will be glad to answer them there. So we would start our discussion having in mind that we need to see how we can make more efficient the collaboration between the regional geos, but also cross-collaboration between the different activities in the work program of GEO. So I have prepared some questions for our speakers, which I hope they will exploit to build on the main questions that we are having. So starting in the same order with Phoebe. So we have seen good progress from your examples in the science user interface. But what about the science policy interface? In your challenges, you have identified that policy action transformation is still missing. So what steps are you foreseeing in this direction so that you have some concrete impact? Phoebe.
Thank you, Evangelos. So what I want to say is that when it comes to utilizing LDN information, this is a multi-stakeholder requirement. We need to have all these partners coming together and addressing the issues. And we cannot say that the LDN initiative, either at global or regional level, is going to be able to support this holistically. So there's the component where we want to avoid, and this speaks to us looking into what are the drivers, and these drivers are going to be different in every region, and how do we address those. Then there's also the component of, yes, we have to provide the information. We are providing this information probably to the technical people who are going to understand where these occurrences are happening. But the part where we have to speak to the policymakers is also very key, because it is the policymaker who assigned the resources for implementation. So that then becomes the gap where we need to be speaking to both people. Then there's also the part where even after we provide this information, we must be able to monitor and show that these resources that are being allocated are actually being utilized and they're actually effective. Because we're speaking on how do we then reverse degradation. So we have to assign, and where actions have been put in place to reverse degradation, we must be able to monitor and say, in this period, this was the degradation at this level, 10 years later, this is where we are. So that way it becomes easy to, even when we seek resources, we get them assigned.
Excellent, yeah, good. The next question is for Angela, but please, the panelists, feel free to comment or come over my question to someone who has already spoken, so don't feel hesitant about this. So to Angelica, you showed examples, nice examples in different countries. So is AmeriGeo taking any action to advocate of the values of these applications as examples in other countries in your region? Because if this is happening, maybe this is a good example or a good way to see how we can also increase collaboration between the regional geos and find all those mechanisms and the interconnection between the mechanisms to make things work. So what's the case?
So the priority, so first, let me clarify that this is only one example of the 20 countries. So because of the 4 minutes, this was a very small sample. I had information from Colombia, Mexico, many other countries there. our priority has been to strengthening the national geos from the beginning. We know that it's the national programs who need to engage and we need to engage with the national programs because it's a value added to the activities that the governments are already designating for they know, the stakeholders know what the gaps, what the needs are. And so our role is complementing the work that they are doing. So it's that would be my only recommendation. We do it regardless of the region. I think that strengthening the national governments and the national geos is so important because sometimes when you have the principal, for them it's very hard to bring other organizations because there is a lateral hierarchy, if you may. The regional, our contribution is to actually help them to work together and how that collaboration can take place in such a way that each organization at the national level keep their own importance and focus on their particular activities.
I fully agree, and I would also come back to this issue of national geos because it seems we are doing well within the global mandates in geo, but when it comes to the countries and to the local problems, we need to find a mechanism to interface with the countries and the different agencies and ministries behind to make this communication more effective. So I will come back to this. So Toshio, as I said before, it was impressive the way that you managed to mobilize the whole ecosystem of stakeholders with administrative responsibilities in your cases. So how did you really manage to do this? What is the secret behind?
Okay, one main reason is our colleagues, all the stakeholders recognize the need to work together by themselves. That is the basis. And at the United Nations framework, as I introduced as one of the key points, we had a high-level discussion continuously. UN's thematic session on water and disaster almost every 2 years we had, and the head of states or member country, and also the president of the General Assembly and UN Secretary General joined. And in the framework, we have a science and technological session. At the session, we decided this direction. This kind of the high-level agreement is very important to engage the department and the ministry of each country. I introduced just one example in Philippines, but in Myanmar, the 4 departments, Sri Lanka, 5 departments, and the Indonesia, 5 ministries, they join. And each ministry, the director general or minister join, and then they led our discussion. So this kind of the engagement is very, very important for promotion.
Nice. Different regions, different cultures. I think we have to learn from each other. And maybe this is some of the things that the regional geos should start talking about. So, Thierry, I mean, you presented a very solid example of how a request from coming from policy at national level drove some action at the research, and you brought back some good outcomes. Usually some of those outcomes stay on the papers and are not becoming policy actions. So even though you touched a little bit upon this, do you really see actions being based off of your analysis? How do you see this evolving in your case?
So thanks, Evangelos. Clearly, in the presentation that have been done of the result of this study, there was some real recommendation for the future. And in all this scenario, there is there are at least 3 points that are really evident and that need action, and that will be taken soon, hopefully after the next election that will be under the next year. I think there is a need for the evolution of the network, the electricity network, and that the question that now asked to RTE, please prepare a plan for evolution in 2030, 2040, and 2050 to integrate a new energy mix with more renewable energy, and to also support the adoption of renewable energy. And so this means that in this series of questions and on this series of action, there are also a series of questions behind that, scientific also, that came back to science. For example, how to support self-consumption of electricity of PV system, and how to push people to have this in an efficient way without having a loss of services and of quality of services. So that's clearly something that will appear in soon, and I think RT, our TSO, is working on that.
Good, nice, thanks you, Thierry. Any questions coming from the audience, please include in the chat. So since we are running a little bit ahead time, a final question horizontal to each one of you. So that would be, how would you see all these solutions and examples presented by you being replicated within other countries in your regions, but most especially between the different regional geos? And if you were to propose one bullet in the list of how geos, the regional geos, should start collaborating with each other, but also with other working activities, what would be your point in this list? Let's start from reverse order with Thierry. No, do you want some time to think? No.
No. I can give you some ideas. If I only one bullet, oh, that's short. So let's say I believe strongly on the bottom-up approach from Geo, and I think the strength of example is something that you cannot imagine can move all the paths and change the way of working for people. So here we have a series of examples, and I think the regional geo can support the change by exemplify what we are doing and to show at all levels the benefit of what we are doing in terms of use of Earth observation and impact on the different geo engagement.
And any plans to mobilize national geo focal points in this attempt? In EuroGeo?
I think there is a need, and I think there is a strong coordination to organize at the EuroGeo level in order to include all the benefit coming from all national geo.
Good. Thank you. Toshio?
2 points.
Okay, I fully agree with the Siri. The bottom-up approach is the most important. And the institutional coordination framework, like a platform, is very, very effective. By inviting the high-level person. So bottom-up approach under the institutional coordination framework, that is key. Thank you.
Thank you, Toshio. Angelica?
Agree with the bottom-up approach, but engaging our thematic initiatives and flagships and activities. So we need to bring all the power that we have in the thematic activities to do whatever we are doing in the national at the national level in such a way that we can support the national agendas that are already designated by the government.
Nice, thank you. And Fib?
For me, I'm looking at it from a bottom-up and top-down approach, and encouraging that so that we have all these people understanding that subject at different levels. I'm also advocating for the collaboration. So LDN can only get us this far, but we need other stakeholders and other collaborators to come in and get us to the last mile. So that component of collaboration that LDN is not addressing, I think is very key. And also collaborating even with other programs within GEO that can be able to support us to reach that last mile. Thank you.
I also thank you, Phoebe. There are some comments in the chat. I fully agree with Steve. It seems that regional geos can play a role by interfacing between the regional and local policymakers and users to collect their user needs, which are tailored and maybe regional dependent, and also to mobilize within the geo community and create the appropriate resources to provide the solution to those needs that will be coming up. So yes, it seems to be a common issue that the regional geos need to tackle with. So I think unless there is any other burning intervention from the audience, or if some of the panelists would like to pose on top of his last intervention, we could close the panel. Thank you very much for your presentations and for your lively discussion. So please stay with us, of course, because after session 2, then we will be joining together with the working group representatives to see how this collaboration can be also strengthened within the GEO work program as a whole, not only between regional GEOs. So having said that, we can move now to the second part of our session. Thank you, Rick, which will be acquiring efforts within GEO's work program to promote the science policy interface through notable outcomes and key plans from 3 working groups: capacity development, climate change, and disaster risk reduction. Next, please. So the first presentation has been prepared by Alison. This will be a pre-recorded video. So Rick, if you may launch it, please. Alison is the co-chair of the GEO Capacity Development Working Group and will drive us through the first results of the relevant mapping exercise that took place within the work program. So, Rick, please.
Hello. I'm happy to be here to present the early results of the GEO work program mapping on behalf of our working group co-chairs. The work program mapping is aimed to identify gaps and potential opportunities for synergy among GEO work program activities to meet policy needs and also provide input to the next work program. This has been undertaken as a cross-working group effort among climate change, disaster risk reduction, capacity development since the end of 2020. Working group members designed the content, which was then turned into an agile mapping interface thanks to the technical support by Esri and AmeriGeo. The mapping interface contains 6 sections with questions on GEO work program activity identification, the scope and area of impact, and how the activity addresses climate action, disaster risk reduction, capacity development, as well as any additional feedback. The mapping was officially launched on the 31st of August through invitations to GEO work program leads. This is an example of what the mapping interface looks like. As you can see, we also have a dashboard that is facilitating the analysis of these results. The first question we asked in the mapping was to identify the geographic scope and the impact of the work of the activities. From this early analysis, we can say that there is a great potential for increased collaborations between regional geos and other thematic GEO work program activities. We foresee using this information to inform strategic engagement of regional GEO networks and GEO work program activities. The second observation is that about half of the current GEO work program activities are already working on all 3 GEO engagement priorities: the Paris Agreement, Sendai Framework, and the Sustainable Development Goals. Because of this, we see a great potential for more targeted cross-working group collaborations. Here are some initial results on the individual policy areas, starting with climate action. From the responses, it appears that while most activities are focused on climate action generally, the link between the GEO work program and the policy process can be improved. Only a few activities state that they actually provide input to the UNFCCC or Paris Agreement. However, upon further analysis, we see that many work program activities actually do provide EO data, information, or products that are relevant to numerous work streams under the UNFCCC and Paris Agreement. The main focus of the current work program seems to be climate adaptation. Now we have a better understanding of the number of activities contributing to climate action. Next steps will be to better understand current and potential impact and how they can be best delivering products and services that address our community needs. From the disaster risk reduction section, based on the results that have already come in, we see that DRR-related GEO work program activities have strong alignment with the Sendai framework, but need assistance establishing connections with DRR users. This assistance may include increased connections with DRR practitioners and encouraging the users to reflect activity efforts in policies and their operations. The DRR working group is now actively developing the EO risk toolkit to address this point. Kani will speak in greater detail about this at a later time. The design of the work program mapping also included capacity development as a cross-cutting essential element for supporting both climate and DRR activities, as well as a vehicle for community empowerment to maximize the impact and utility of Earth observations. From preliminary analysis of initial survey responses, we see there's a significant amount of interest in sharing capacity development resources across the GEO work program, and a noted need to increase or improve collaborations across GEO work program elements that may not normally collaborate on resource sharing. Survey responses suggest that collaborating across some work program flagships, initiatives, and community activities could be increased in order to leverage capacity development resources that could be produced and shared by multiple work program components, especially in a GEO toolkit that has been co-developed with users and that includes use cases, and training resources. There is a substantial amount of capacity development resources already in the GEO community. How can we make sure that we know what is already available and make it findable and accessible before investing often limited funds or resources in developing new capacity development tools? We are already gaining important insights into optimal delivery methods, levels of competency, synergies with disaster risk reduction and climate, and other indicators of gaps and needs in capacity development throughout the GEO work program. From the analysis, for example, we see that drought, flood, and wildfire are all addressed by many GEO activities, as well as the highest reporting themes within capacity development resources. Ensuring effective communication, coordination, and collaboration among the diverse GEO activities engaged in capacity development for climate and disaster risk reduction areas will be an important element of future work to increase our impact. In summary, we can say that the overall feedback was very good. We have had 47 complete responses out of 64 activities in regional GEOs, which makes about 73%. And we note that some are still working on it and appreciate your contributions. The mapping overall was helpful to establish a baseline for our current work program. It is clear that the link to policy needs improvement and that GEO work program activities could improve collaboration with regional GEOs and among themselves. At the same time, the results will help drive the future activities of working groups, which should establish more cross-working group collaborations. Our next steps may include the mapping as intended, that the mapping is intended as an open-ended exercise. So we will encourage work program leads to respond or update their responses in the next few months. Then the working groups will need to continue the analysis of the mapping outcomes, and with that, deliver a report to the program board in early 2022, including possible ideas for calls for proposals, as well as concrete actions for work program activities. We will align with the program board timeline to make sure that this report makes an impact in the development of the next GEO work program. Thank you for listening. And on behalf of all of the working group co-chairs, we will be available to answer any questions you may have.
Okay. Digital thanks to Alison for preparing this presentation, and we can move forward with next one, which will be presented by Lucia Perugini, the co-chair of the Geoclimate Change Working Group, and she will explain to us how Geo supports national and international climate policy. So Lucia, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Evangelos, for the introduction. I will be happy to present an overview of the ongoing work of the Geoclimate Change Working Group. Next, please. Thank you. The Climate Change Working Group was established in 2020 to develop and implement a strategy for climate action involving the GEO community. Overall, we have 100 members and 4 subgroups that are working on different aspects, including improving coordination and uptake of the GEO work program activities relevant to climate change, support countries' action within the UNFCCC and IPCC, and strengthening the collaboration with other key partners, and supporting mitigation and adaptation action with Earth observation information and applications. Next, please. We have a roadmap for all our climate action activities, and these include most notably the different workshops that have been held, and we'll go through them quickly with this presentation. But most notably, we had the Geoclimate workshop in September, and our participation in the COP26 in November, and the Geo Week where we are now, with several dedicated sessions and side events on climate. Also, I should mention that the next year we are planning to have more work focus on the regional level, and of course we will participate to the UN Climate Conference COP27 that will be hosted by Egypt in November 22, and we plan, of course, to attend. Next, please. Regarding the Geoclimate Policy and Finance workshop that was held in September, this was the second workshop of this kind for Geo. The first one was held on 2018. At this link, the link you can find underneath, there are the recordings and the presentation, and I would kindly ask Sarah to put the link in the chat so you can access them. In summary, the workshop brought clarity on the unique contribution and the role of GEO, especially with regard to the existing and potential support to climate adaptation. These represent a basis to initiate a process to seek a GEO mandate under the UNFCCC to deliver guidance for countries on climate action based on Earth observation data and information. Also, the GEO Secretariat launched a new dedicated Geoclimate Finance work stream for 2022 to involve the GEO community in opportunities to apply Earth observation as a critical tool to unlock finance for climate-friendly projects in developing countries, and to support private investment decisions by corporates and banks, pension funds, insurance companies, We have heard all about this in the climate action session yesterday, probably more, some of you were there, and finally the workshop was an occasion to strengthen and build partnerships with GEO partners and new associates. Next, please. One of the key set of action of the climate change working group relates to the engagement with the UNFCCC. These are some of the actions we took to participate actively in the UN climate change conference COP26 in Glasgow that ended just 2 weeks ago. Some highlights, we provided the COP26 geo briefing to the delegation in advance of COP26. At the COP, the GeoSec organized and participated in over 15 events and engaged on bilateral meetings with governments and partners promoting geo activities across key areas of the Paris Agreement. Geo participated in the annual Earth Information Day and the research and systematic observation negotiations under the UNFCCC, which is the core of the geo activities actually within the UNFCCC. Within the SABSTA, which is the subsidiary body of scientific advice. With a geo presentation, we had there and several posters. Also, a geo contribution was included in a presentation by the whole Earth observation community in the possible input to the global stocktake. But most importantly, geo was mentioned in the research systematic observation negotiation conclusions for the first time since 2007, acknowledging the value of the partnerships, biosphere observation, Earth observation related products, indicators, application. This is a first steps actually towards obtaining this geo mandate I was mentioning earlier. In general, at COP, there was a lot of emphasis on the role of Earth observation on ocean, land, ice, and biodiversity, also involving indigenous people and local communities and supporting national adaptation plans. Before and during COP, GEO has been involved in the National Adaptation Plan Technical Working Group, supporting matters related to the least developed countries under the subsidiary body for implementation. And as I said, COP27 will be hosted in Egypt in November 2022. Where the main focus will be most likely on adaptation, as a COP is hosted by African country, and it will be important to deliver geo products well in advance to be able to get the recognition. Next, please. On adaptation, an important achievement worth mentioning is the experience of GeoGlam at the national level, which represent the basis of the key knowledge product GEO is aiming to deliver to its members, especially developing countries. Within this experience, GeoGlam have worked with the government of Uganda to provide this early information system on drought and crop failure. So early warning triggered a disaster risk financing facility and a public work program to offset agricultural losses, which saved millions of funds and thousands of households from food insecurity in 2017. Based on this success, Earth observation based crop monitoring is now an operational part of Uganda National Early Warning Bulletin. So the GeoGlam is now building on their co-development experience to develop supplementary technical guidelines for the National Adaptation Plan, so-called NAPs, to be submitted to the UNFCCC. Funding about $170,000 of US is planned to be granted to GeoGlam from the UK government to continue developing the NAP guidance and implementation via in-country workshop in 2022 targeting African LDCs. Then I think we can indeed rising enough public and private funding to develop and implement NAPs is the real challenge in this case. Regarding Earth observation for mitigation, which is the next slide, please. Thank you. We had two, on the mitigation side, we had two workshops. The one held in June was a GFI virtual workshop that kicked off an important collaboration between GEO and the IPCC Task Force on National Greenhouse Gas Inventory and Land Representation for the inventories, with the aim to identify tools that would comply with the IPCC guidelines and that can be further developed and made available to support UNFCCC parties. And they will be then freely available online through the CEPAL platform hosted by FAO. As a follow-up, the IPCC support units for the inventories identified one of the software developers from the workshop to support the IPCC inventory software. So it's a very important follow-up from this first workshop. The second workshop took place in November in virtual form. It was organized by the JRC and of the European Commission in collaboration of the GEO, and looked at contribution of Earth observation communities to the FOLU sector within the UNFCCC, addressing the needs for the FOLU inventories. FOLU is agriculture, forest, or other land use for those who are not in the sector, and the global stocktake of the Paris Agreement, involving the Copernicus program as well as Geos and Geo communities. And in these 3 days workshop, it was an opportunity to this community to exchange their experience, tools and plans, and discuss and explore how they can respond to needs and requirements, and in the longer term understand how to enhance also the use of the Earth observation data sets in the modeling and data integration system that need to be developed in the scientific as well as political context. And there were experts from NASA, ESA, and the other research community involved in European funded research projects, but also Copernicus program was present. It was a very interesting exchange held. And then besides, and concluding, we are working also on an information note on the greenhouse gas inventories under the Paris Agreement and the role of Earth observation, summarizing the data requirements that are useful for the greenhouse gas inventories and how the Earth observation, in particular remote sensing data, can contribute to build a complete and consistent time series for the national inventory, considering the guidelines that the inventory agency need to follow. And also outlining the opportunities and challenges that needs to be addressed to make the Earth observation data effectively used in the inventories. Next one. And with that, I would like to thank you for the attention, but also my co-chair, Virginia Brookett, and Mark Dowell, and Angel Valdivieso, and the GEO Secretariat, in particular Sara Venturini, for the work done, and all working group members that contributed to all the steps accomplished by the working group so far. You can find the full report of the group in the link you can find here, and again, I will kindly ask Sarah to put in the chat if possible, so you can download it.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Lucia. Very systematic and well-coordinated work done in the climate change working group. So thank you all for this. And happy birthday, if I am not wrong, for today. So we have warm wishes by all of us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for being with us, sharing this special day with us. So we're moving forward with the next presentation by Kene Onokube, the co-chair of the Geo Disaster Risk Reduction Working Group. So we had the EO Toolkit for Sustainable Cities and Human Settlements up now. So I'm very glad to see that there's another toolkit being developed, and Kene will drive us through this new development. Kene, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure speaking with us all, and having to represent other colleagues who are also listening in from the different parts of the world where you may be. So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Next slide, please. Yeah, I won't be speaking to some of the things that we have here on the slides. So I thank Evangelist for the introduction, and I'm happy to present the progress of the GeoDRR working group as one of the co-chairs. My focus actually will be on the top priorities of the working group and the foundational task, which is looking especially at the development of Earth observation risk toolkit. Next slide. And so let me start by explaining what our work group is about. The GeoDRR working group was established to develop and implement a coherent and cross-cutting approach within GEO to advance the use of Earth observation in support of national DRR and resilience strategies, including policies and programs, of course. Next. And as Alison had briefly explained in her presentation from the early results of the joint mapping exercise that was done, we have learned that DRR-related GEO work program activities are hinged on two things. One, it's strongly aligned with the Sendai framework, but it still needs assistance in establishing connections with DRL users. Next, please. So on the second part, you see that we do experience some challenges, but this sort of weakness, as shown in the pie charts you see here, when we asked GEO work program activities colleagues whether they work with DRR practitioners and Sendai focal points, or whether they are aware if countries leverage their activity efforts, or whether their activities are mentioned on national DRR strategies of the country they work with, the answers were largely no. Next, please. On the with these mapping results in mind, the GeoDRR, the GeoDRR working group is developing the EO risk toolkit in collaboration with UNDRR and ESRI and other strategic partners. And the toolkit aims to provide DRR users with access to open source Earth observation tools and services to fill knowledge gaps on hazards, vulnerabilities, and exposure, at the national level in developing countries. And so, in this regard, next please. Our strategic partners, actually, such as the UNDRR, are crucial. You will have to understand. You will agree with me. If we must then be able to reach out to the potential users of the EO products. And so the development of the EO risk toolkit is grounded by a close collaboration and alignment with the UNDRR flagship initiative called the GRAPH, and that's the Global Risk Assessment Framework. Next, please. Somehow, this is a rough image of the EO Risk Toolkit hub site. For those of you who might have had contact with it, or those who might be seeing it later, because it is the DRR version of the EO Toolkit for Sustainable Cities and Human Settlements, and it's hosted in the by the UN Habitat and run by the EO4 SDG team. The appearance on the two websites would likely be similar, if you look at them next. So within it, you will see this expected content. You will see use cases which highlight concrete examples of usage of products offered by the GEO communities, in particularly the GEO work program activities. Again, you would also see policy briefs for policymakers and users, funders and operational agencies to let them know about the EO tools and services, especially in terms of policy relevance. The third part is that you will also see the technical guidance and methodologies that will assist for operational users of the tools and services. So altogether, we intend to make a package that these three types of contents by the EO tools or services will be able to be applicable to. And so we are starting with use cases on tools coming out of GeoGlows and the GWIS as well. Next slide, please. In coordination with the UNDRR unit, relevant unit of it, we are hoping to publicly launch the EO Risk Toolkit. And that'll be during the major international conference hosted by the UNDRR. I think that's the 7th session of the global platform for DRR scheduled in May next year. That's in 2022. Today actually marks an important first step to share our plan on this toolkit with the GEO community, and would love to get your kind feedbacks. So in addition to the discussion time during this session, GeoDRR work group is scheduled to host 2 identical side events, and that's on Thursday and on Friday, in order to explain in greater details, about the plans to interact with many of you to start brainstorming on ideas for the content development. And like I did mention, the first side event actually would be happening tomorrow evening, and the second one is on Friday in an early time slot. Next, please. So through this event, we'd like to invite all of you to join us in either one of them, but through these 2 events, we explain our plans in details and get your feedback, like I explained earlier. And we are really hoping to identify, the tools and the services coming out of GEO work programs that are either available or in development. So if you are involved in GEO work program activities, please do join and tell us about your reactions and ideas for collaboration. Again, if you are interested, please take a look at the concept note of the toolkit, which includes all the information we will talk about during, in the side event. You can find it in the annex to the DRR Working Group report, which is document for this GEO Week Plenary Session 3. Next, please. And thank you for your attention. Have a great day, everyone.
We thank you, Kenneth. It has been a very clear presentation, very promising work and the toolkit, and we are really looking forward to being able to share the toolkit with our national and city stakeholders. So thank you very much.
Yes,
so now we are moving to a discussion panel once more. So let's go back to the camera's view. Thank you very much. I would kindly ask the regional GEO representatives and the working groups representatives to turn on the cameras. Since Alison is not with us, maybe Sarah would like to come into play, and everybody else. So we are going to keep this part very short. Joanna, please let me know if you wish to intervene here somehow. to save some time for the last part. So, and now I'm going to put some pressure on you, and starting with the working group representatives, Sarah, Ken, and Lucia. You have the regional geos here. They are looking things vertically, geographically wise, and you are looking things thematically, horizontally. So what would you expect from the regional geos to spread your works and your messages out in the regions? So you take the floor, you take the questions now to the regional representatives, please. Who wants to begin? Sarah, yeah, please.
I will open the floor and then pass it to Lucia for more details. So yes, I think the activities we're doing, especially at the national level, need to be undertaken in close coordination with regional geos, especially when it comes to implementation of the knowledge products that we are developing. For instance, on the NAP guidance, we foresee in-country training, and we cannot do this without the expertise that is mobilized by regional geos, especially AfriGeo for adaptation and other regional geos for other topics. So that's my first point. And Lucia may want to add something.
Yeah. Just to complement, I think there is also an opportunity also to have some exchange among the regional geo on specific issues, and for the, I mean, there are working example within each regional geo performed by, I mean, also like I was mentioning during my presentation of the Geoclimate guidance that also brought Sarah into the table as an example, that this will be just the first product of a series of a GeoNAP guidance to support adaptation plans, documents, and therefore this can be actually other geo work program could also develop this guidance document and follow up within in-country training and implementation. I'm thinking about Geo Blue Planet or Geo Gloves. And then regional geo could actually, they are important to leverage these existing efforts, but also not only, I think, vertically, but also sharing some information and experience they had successfully in their work. So having some targeted exchange among the regional geo, I think it could be also useful.
Thank you, Lucia. Also, Joanna has asked for the floor, please.
Thank you so much, Evangelos. Thank you for that. Basically a small point regarding the climate change work group, which has made, I would say, tremendous progress over the last year. I would like to highlight that as European Commission, we have given this obviously great importance on the global scale, and the EU as such as well in general. We all know that climate change and the environmental degradation, I think today, are being more and more seen as an existential threat to Europe and the whole world. We obviously support GEO's endeavors to ensure the continued recognition of the value of Earth observations within the IPCC and the UNFCCC as well. There are, of course, promising benefits, as we see it, in linking also the activities of the Climate Change Working Group to other ongoing activities within the field of Earth observation. And I have in mind here, in particular, Copernicus. And of course, the same is true for linking with the initiatives such as Horizon Europe, the mission on climate adaptation, for instance, which we see as serving very much the momentum, the attention, the visibility, apart from the funding as well of climate adaptation. And we have a specific goal there of supporting at least 150 European regions and communities to become climate resilient by 2030. I think in the coming days, there will be a call the cities to actually apply for this for this challenge, not privilege at the end of the day. We shall also be increasing our support for international climate resilience and preparedness through the provision of resources by prioritizing action and increasing effectiveness through, for instance, the scaling up of international finance and through stronger global engagement and also exchanges on adaptation. Thank you very much, Evangelos, and thank you very much to the leaders of the working groups, the chairs of the working groups, for their work.
Thank you very much, Joanna. So, Toshio, you have the floor.
Yes, the adaptation, climate change adaptation planning and its implementation is a very, very important and a key target in each national government and also the community level. At the community level, they need integrated data and information. Not only some specific domain data, but the hazard data and the damage data and the socioeconomic data should be integrated. So such kind of the information should be shared with the community. So that's why we invite the representative of the local government, academy, and civil society, private sector, the media, and then the training of trainer we did. So they are very, very positive and also the aggressive, and that is a community level. And at the national level, not only the meteorological and weather forecasting bureau, but also the public works and the Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of Environment, and Disaster Management Authority can work together with the space agency. For example, in Indonesia. So then the 1 month e-learning course, by inviting 32 experts from various ministry and organization join such a training for trainers. So from the national level to the community level, in each country, they need to develop the adaptation plan. With regard to the regional cooperation, in Asian Pacific region, we have a common issue, the monsoonal and the tropical cyclone. Such kind of the water-related disaster is really a key and a common issues. So we can share our experiences. And also the regional framework is very, very important for a kind of, how can I say, good competitive the relationship. Not only one country, but they want to develop their system, a better system than others. So this kind of the collaboration and competitive, the collaborative framework is very, very important. That is my input.
Thank you very much, Toshio. Yeah, I think unless there is any intervention from the other regional geos, please just let me know. Thierry, yes, please.
Yes.
It's short that we need to go to the next session, please. Yeah.
Okay, very short.
Yeah.
So just a first remark, the regional geo are most often representative of a caucus of countries. So that's really a vehicle to go to the national level, to the regional level, and vice versa. So there is a strong need for collaboration between the different regional geo with the working group. I think most of the representative of the different regional geo are involved in the working group, but there is here a way to link really from national to regional and from regional to national. So please use this link and go on. And I forgot my second point, so don't worry.
Okay, then Angelica, we'll have to fill in your second point.
Yes. AmeriGeo, in collaboration with actually GeoGlows, we have been looking at the national adaptation plans in some of the countries in the Americas. And one of the things that we have noticed is that the majority of adaptation plans are geared towards mitigation rather than preparation. So I think that not only the regional geos, but also some of the thematic activities are definitely fundamental to work with the regional in the revision of this information.
You're muted, Evangelos.
Thank you, Angelica, for your comment. And Lucia is also commenting.
I got my second point. I think the link. I think we have to stress. We discussed yesterday about the integrated implementation, and there is direct link between the EO toolkit on DRR and the activity on the climate change, due to the fact that we will have more extreme events due to climate change. And so I think there is also a path for collaboration between these two aspects. So that's it.
Good. And Lucia also describes the next steps in the following workshops by the Climate Change Working Group. The regional geos will be asked to be there. So please be prepared, because your role is being upgraded much and the expectations will be rising. So with this, I would like to thank you once more for taking part in this discussion panel. And we should move to the last part, to the last session today. Thank you, Rick. On resilient cities and human settlements, the fourth engagement priority. So next, please. I have the pleasure to introduce our next guest speaker, Helene Miribili. She is the Chief Heat Officer of the city of Athens, and she has been Deputy Mayor for Urban Nature and Climate Resilience in the past. And she's also the advisor to the Mayor of Athens on resilience and sustainability, and advisor of the Arts Lockferrer Resilience Center of the Atlantic Council in Washington. So we are very glad to have one of those stakeholders that we need to engage with us. And she will be introducing us to the theme of this subsession, which is nothing more than urban resilience. So, Helene, Lenyo, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Evangele. It's wonderful to be with you and to be listening to the previous discussions. Let me start immediately with my presentation. So, as most of you already know, we are, for the first time in the history of the planet, we have more than 50% of the people living in urban settlements. And we are expecting that this is just continuing, and it's not, we don't see any any reason to think that this is going to stop. It's actually increasing due to the different crises and challenges that people in the countryside are facing, mostly due to climate change, but not only, of course. And today, we have cities cover about 3% of the Earth's surface, but they produce 80% of the global GDP, and they are responsible for 70% of the global GHG emissions. So it's a really good idea to get into cities to keep cities as a real kind of focal point. Also, during the COP26, cities had a very strong presence. I just wanted to say that. So next, please. it's really important for cities, exactly because of partially the reasons that I said before, to be able to build resilience and to be able to survive and to thrive no matter what kind of challenges they face. And when we think of urban resilience, we basically methodologically think of two types of challenges. We break them down into acute shocks and chronic stresses, and we think that these are important to be seen like that. So when we talk about resilience, we don't just talk about disaster response, but we're actually thinking of the city in a systemic way and building the capacity to actually withstand all types of problems, because shocks usually hit the cities where the stresses have already created the trouble. Next, please. We define urban resilience as the capacity of individuals, communities, institutions, businesses, and systems in general, urban systems within a city, to survive, adapt, and grow, no matter what kind of chronic stresses and acute shocks they experience. Next, please. We also know that there's a lot of infrastructure that will be built in the next 20 to 30 years, because cities need more infrastructure, exactly because there's more people moving to them, but also because most of the infrastructure in a lot of the cities is around the world is aging. And we expect that something like, it's been estimated that about 57 trillion of global infrastructure investment will be needed by 2030. And the big question, of course, is what kind of infrastructure that's going to be. And where the type of infrastructure that is going to be built will, of course, in a way, judge. It will be critical on whether we manage, I believe, to survive on this planet or not because of climate change. I think it's very much linked to that. So it's really, really important to figure out what kind of stuff we need to build and how we need to build it. So next, please. Of course, there is. I should quote Plato, being a Greek, who said that any city, however small, is in fact divided into two. One, the city for the poor, and the other, the city for the rich. So we see here in this picture, this gated green community, and outside these informal settlements, and the picture is actually from Brazil, Sao Paulo. So this is an increasing trend in cities of increasing inequalities. While we have decreasing inequity globally, we have increasing equity in cities. Another very important reason to figure out how, and because this is really significant for building resilience. So resilience has the infrastructural kind of aspect to it, but also social resilience we have seen is one of the most important aspects. Like so, making sure that we have a good what's it called? Social cohesion is one of the most important issues for building resilience in cities. So next, please. So in Athens, we have a very densely built and very densely populated city. Next, please. We went through a process of creating the Athens Resilience Strategy for 2030 and launched it in 2017, a few years ago, and which was bottom up. We figured out by talking with the people and experts what are the main shocks and what are the main stresses for Athens. Next, please. We decided while we were doing that one of the things that we really missed was data. We had some data that we found. I'm sure that there's a lot of data in different scientific institutions and research centers often there are data, but often cities don't have access to them, or anyway, it's not easy to get access to them, or it's kind of data that do not directly respond to the needs of the city. So for example, for us, it's extremely important that we have more data about what kind of gray infrastructure we have in cities, and how many kilometers are our asphalt roads, and how much heat do they absorb, and what kind of responses do we get from the different types of surfaces that we have, for example, in relation to extreme heat or other types of urban challenges like flash floods that we are facing. Next, please. We know that we have a very unequally organized green spaces in the city, and if you look at any city, you can kind of tell immediately where the most vulnerable most vulnerable period populations live, because it's also where the socioeconomic kind of vulnerability is also exists. It's at where the map doesn't have any green. So if you just look at the city, you can immediately tell kind of where you should more or less start doing your policies. But it's really important to know more clearly where. We don't have very much money. Our budgets are kind of smaller, and we really have to know how to approach the most vulnerable and where to really target and get the most out of each euro that we spend. So this is really, next please, this is really important for us. This is just a kind of a map of the strategy that we did that had 4 basic pillars. Next, please. This is just a quick kind of reminder that this summer, Athens, Greece went through an incredible heat wave, and we had, again, the data was from Eurostat. We didn't have any data for them. It's very difficult. For example, I know that this is not the kind of satellite data or the other type of Earth observation data, but this is really important for us, for example, to have mortality and morbidity data, which we don't have. We had 2,300 people die within a couple of weeks this summer from heat. And anyway, next, please. This is the type of data that we managed to have mapped out, and this is the type of data we want, but we really want much greater granularity. This was the kind of stuff that we managed to get in 2017. As you can see, the map, the heat map is kind of vague. I will show you in the next slide. The right image shows low income households.
Sorry for interrupting. We would need to wrap it up because we need to go to the voting process. And
so let me show the next slide, which is the kind of map that we created that has a lot of granularity in relation to heat, which is from satellite, of course, data, but we need much more geospatial correlations, and we need those geospatial correlations because we need always, when we do policy, a reference base. We need to be able to first of all, we need to create data-driven policy. Very important, because otherwise we're just throwing money to the wind these days. The second one is that we need to have a reference base and to be able to monitor what we do. The third thing is that we need data for transparency and accountability of our politicians. And finally, this is the most important thing, because this can keep us from corruption and can help democracy in our countries and our cities, which turns back to us being able to fight things like climate change. Thank you very much. And I think this is where I should stop.
Exactly. Thank you very, very much, Lenio. I think you made through what we said before about the bottom-up approach. So you unfolded in front of us the needs of the city, where they are currently standing, and what we need to be doing. So in the chat, you will be asked by Joanna to start approving while I'm doing the presentation about the approval of the fourth engagement priority. So please follow the chat. Rick, let's go a little bit quickly through my slides. So I'm going to give you some elements about the geo strategies into the fourth engagement priority. Next, please. So up to now, we had 4 global policy frames, but just 3 engagement priorities in geo. Next, please. So having started discussing about the new urban agenda in 2016, it took some time until we are now ready to approve resilient cities and human settlements as the 4th engagement priority for GEO and start working on this. Next, please. I mean, it was clear why we should do that. The only thing I need to say is that the conditions in cities will become worse and worse in the years to come. Next, please. So geostrategy, as it has been presented in the previous XCOMs and program boards, has an outwards component where it means to engage citizen stakeholders to collect and understand their needs and communicate what GEO has to offer, support the cities in the countries to understand the values and how to use the different tools that GEO can offer for cities and human settlements, and contribute to the implementation of the new urban agenda. May I remind you that there is going to be an assessment every 4 years and GEO needs to play a great role there. Next, please. Inwards, GEO needs to give more visibility to ongoing and encourage new activities within GEO under the new topic that we are going to be working with. Start developing new tools and services in support of the new urban agenda and the new the EO toolkit for the cities and the EO risk toolkit may be in this direction. We should create more synergies between the regional geos and the different geo activities, as was the theme of our discussion today, and this was really very, very clear. Next, please. We made, as an urban resilience subgroup, the first mapping of urban activities in the different regional geos. We found out many different aspects, like, for example, the implementation of different EO toolkits for cities in different countries in AmeriGeo. We also saw some activities in AfriGeo, mapping vulnerability associated with COVID-19 in informal settlements or the impact of the refugees of land use and environment. And in EuroGeo also we saw some structural progress, like the existence of action groups, one of them focusing on urban resilience, and lots of investments made by projects focusing on urban pollution, health risk, energy, and other city-relevant topics. Next, please. Practically speaking, and with the approval of the fourth engagement priority that it is foreseen, the GEO will be driven by the engagement plan that Joanna also mentioned, a living document that will be being updated, and it will be driving our activities in this new engagement priority, supported by a working group and an urban resilience coordinator, similarly to what is happening with the other working groups, disasters, climate change, and we have already seen how much and how efficiently they have been working in this direction. So with this, next slide, please. We launched for approval the adoption of resilient cities and human settlements as GEO's fourth engagement priority, driven by the new urban agenda. And with this slide, I pass the floor back to Joanna to do the concluding remarks on the session. So thank you very much, everybody. Joanna.
Thank you, everybody. I hope you can see me now because there's this presentation on the screen still. Okay, but I can take it off. So thank you for the support that we are receiving. Germany, France as well, and I wonder Sweden as well, very good. So it seems that we're getting blanket support here. There's a long comment now coming in. I need to look at it. Mexico. Let's see. Yes, United States as well. Thank you, Canada, in the meantime, and Mexico too. May I also thank in particular our guest speaker, Ms. Helene Miribili, the Senior Advisor at the City of Athens. I hope I got the pronunciation right, Helene. I'm very impressed by your intervention because I'm a firm believer that if we have to deliver behavioral change, it has to happen in the cities first. And I think the cities need to be a source of inspiration, but also as a playground, if you like, for the citizens to themselves bring about the changes in their behavior and the facilitators, if you like, as well. The climate adaptation solutions you have proposed both protect the city's most vulnerable population and also establish green infrastructure guidelines and the policies too. So I'm not sure if there's anybody who would like to intervene on this, but we really do not have the time. I really thank you for having put your agreement. Costa Rica, Spain, Switzerland, South Africa, they're all adding their approval to adapting the resilient cities and human settlements priority as the fourth engagement priority of GEO. That's really wonderful. Thank you so much also for the work which has led also the delegations to be convinced of this and to adopt it as a fourth priority. Okay, so I think with that we can close today's session and we'll be back tomorrow at noon. Thank you. Goodbye to all.